A woman is going through a breakup with her husband, which hurts her dignity. She overcomes the pain, finds strength in herself and starts a new life, turning the loss into personal rebirth and freedom. A party with friends has always been a moment for her when you can forget about every day worries and just be among familiar people, breathe easily and feel like a part of something bigger. She came in a light dress, the scent of spring was in the air, promising the beginning of something new. He stood next to her, seemingly indifferent and distant, but this indifference hid the burden accumulated over time. They are together, but in fact separated by the silence that has long hung between them. Conversations echoed around, laughter and voices filled the room, but suddenly a question appeared in the air that disturbed the lightness of the atmosphere. The topic of children, always delicate and personal, was heard loudly and unexpectedly. She felt something cold tighten in her chest, and her heart trembled from an invisible blow. This question had always been an untouchable taboo, and suddenly it turned into a sharp knife. The man answered loudly, laughing to cover up the consequences, but every word he said was like a blow. He expressed his frank contempt for her and their opportunity to become parents. His words echoed in her mind, like a heavy stone that had fallen on her soul and shattered it into 1,000 fragments. There was a silence in the room, heavy and unpleasant, and all eyes fell on her. She felt that she had become the center of unexpected, unwanted attention. Pain and confusion began to boil in her heart. Everything that had seemed solid and stable suddenly turned into ruins. She could not find an answer, whether it was the truth, or a joke, or just a word thrown in a moment of irritation. Her inner world began to collapse, filled with pain and disappointment. The following days became a continuous nightmare. Her husband began to move away, became cold and silent, as if wanting to erase everything that was between them. She felt an emptiness that consumed her day after day. Dreams of a life together, of a family, seemed to have dissipated, leaving behind only sadness and emptiness. She began to analyze every moment of their relationship, looking for traces of hidden hostility or discontent that she had not noticed before. Vivid memories of happy moments scrolled through her memory, but now they seemed distant and unreal. Instead of warmth, there was cold and fear with each morning. It became harder for her to wake up. She felt that she was losing herself, that her world was falling apart into small pieces. Every day was filled with doubts and pain, as if she were walking on the sharp fragments of her own life. She understood that she could no longer live in constant fear and uncertainty. She had to find a way out, but the path was covered with darkness. She did not yet know whether she would be able to walk this path. But the realization of the need to move forward forced her to take it step by step. Her thoughts increasingly turned to herself. She tried to find strength in her own soul, looking for answers inside, where there was no longer any dependence on others. She felt that from now on her life belonged only to her, and she had the right to choose who she would be and where she would go. Each new day was a test, but also an opportunity to become stronger. She began to notice the little things, the first rays of the sun breaking through the curtains, the aroma of fresh coffee, the rustle of the wind outside the window. These simple joys became a support for her and a sign that life goes on, despite the pain and disappointment. She felt that the world had not ended. On the contrary, a new page had opened, which she needed to fill with her own content. She was ready to begin this journey, even though she didn't know what lay ahead. She felt like this wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The beginning of a story about how she would find herself, her happiness, and her freedom, no matter what had once come between them. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, feeling for the first time in a long time that life could be different after the party that changed everything. Her life began to fall apart. A sense of helplessness and betrayal flooded her soul, like cold water seeping into every crevice. Every morning began with heavy breathing, and every evening brought only more unanswered questions. Memories of happy moments with him seemed to recede further and further, becoming only shadows of the past. She could not find peace in her thoughts, because all their joint plans were crumbling before her eyes. Pictures of the future that would never come true swirled in her head. The feeling of loss filled every cell of her body, like a thick fog that made movement and thoughts difficult. She began to be tormented by questions about her own worth. She doubted herself, her attractiveness, whether she was worthy of his love and support. These doubts sharpened her like small arrows, and every day the pain became stronger. She closed herself in, avoiding contact with people, afraid to appear weak or broken. The world outside her room seemed alien and hostile. Even familiar things lost their former meaning and joy, however. Something inside her did not allow her to break completely. A small but persistent feeling that this was not the end, that there could be something different, better ahead. It was like a quiet voice in the darkness, which gradually gained strength. Finally, she began to take small steps towards a new life. At first, it was morning walks that brought fresh air and lightness, which was so lacking for so long. Then a return to her favorite hobbies that once gave joy and a sense of self-importance. Every day was a struggle between the desire to despair and the desire to live on. She learned to hear herself, her needs and desires, not being afraid to be alone with her thoughts. It was not easy, but important. Those around her began to notice the changes, a slow but steady rebirth. Her eyes gradually filled with light again, and her smile became sincere, albeit infrequent. She stopped hiding from the world and began to find new sources of joy. However, the shadow of the past still hung over her. Every time she felt the approach of peace, anxiety arose in her heart, reminding her of the pain that had once been. She was afraid that she would not be able to completely forget and forgive. Rebuilding trust in herself was difficult. She learned to let go of what she could not change and accept her own mistakes without judgment. This was a new, difficult, but necessary part of her journey. She began to understand that self-love is not just words, but actions. It is taking care of your own body and soul, choosing to take a step towards the light every day, even if the darkness is still nearby. New acquaintances and the support of friends became a support for her. They helped not to lose faith, gave strength when it seemed that the whole world was against her. She began to open up again, trust people and learn to accept help. The daily struggle gradually bore fruit. She felt that she was getting stronger every day, that the pain would not be able to break her forever. Her soul began to be reborn, and this feeling was extremely important. She did not know what awaited her, but now she was ready to accept any challenges. She was ready to build a new life without looking back. Her path was just beginning, and every step was a step towards freedom and happiness. After the internal struggle, she began to move more. The feeling that something needed to change, not only in herself, but also in the outside world, became obsessive and urgent. She took on new projects, did things that she had previously postponed due to lack of time or fear. She opened up unexplored horizons for herself, felt how life was gaining momentum again. With each new day, an echo of the former confidence that was hidden deep inside was felt. Work became not just a duty, but an opportunity to rediscover herself. She tried not to think about him for a long time, but his shadow still stuck out in the corners of her thoughts. She tried not to let these thoughts control her, but from time to time doubts and fears returned with renewed force. One day she accidentally came across stories on social networks that caused her a strong shock. That man, seemed to live a completely different life, free, carefree, bright. Each new photo, each video spoke of adventures, meetings with new people, trips that she once imagined with him. But now it was his own reality, where there was no place For her, she felt this information pierce her like a knife. There was a sense of betrayal and disappointment, but at the same time a strange freedom. She could finally see him for who he really was. Outside of their relationship, it made her think about the real reason for their breakup. Maybe he never wanted what she imagined. Maybe their paths had diverged a long time ago, and she simply did not notice it before she began to feel that the moment of choice was coming for her, to remain a prisoner of the past or to move forward, regardless of the pain and losses. This choice was not easy, but it became crucial. She packed her things and went on a short trip to distract herself and clear her mind. During this trip, she met people who reminded her of the beauty of the world and the diversity of human destinies. She saw that life is multifaceted and that everyone is entitled to their own mistakes and choices. This journey was not only a vacation for her, but also a search for herself. She felt herself blossoming again, although not without wounds. Each new step was filled with a desire to understand who she wanted to be. Returning home, she realized that she could no longer live in the shadow of his image and thoughts. Her world should be her own, bright, rich, free. She began to communicate with new people, discovered new opportunities and hobbies for herself. She realized that life goes on and that she still has many chances to find happiness, but the past did not let go easily. Every time she tried to move forward, memories and pain returned, making her wonder if she was doing the right thing. It was a constant struggle between the desire to forget and the need to remember. She realized that in order to truly free herself, you need not only to accept the past, but also to forgive yourself and him. It was the most difficult test she had ever gone through. Her changes were noticed by those around her. They saw how she became more confident, how the light in her eyes returned. This inspired not only her, but also those around her. She found the strength to let go of the resentment and pain that held her in place. She began to live for herself, remaining grateful for the lessons that this story had given her. Her life took on a new meaning, and she began to understand that true strength lies in the ability to forgive and love herself, even when it seemed that the world was collapsing. This was just the beginning of a new path, where she herself was the creator of her own destiny. And this thought gave her the strength to move on towards her true happiness. Returning to her usual life turned out to be more difficult than she expected. It seemed that the world around her not only did not become simpler, but on the contrary, began to resemble a labyrinth of many closed doors and unexpected turns. The sense of freedom she had fought for began to be overshadowed by an anxiety that gnawed at her from the inside. In her calmest moments, memories of him would suddenly come flooding back, not just his words and actions, but also who he had been during that period of their lives. These images made her question her own strength and the meaning of the steps she had taken. It seemed to her that he still had power over her. Even though he had physically left her forever, she began to notice that some of the friends who had supported her before were beginning to distance themselves. Their attitude became cold and indifferent, as if she no longer needed their attention. This added to the feeling of isolation and loneliness that was becoming unbearable. Despite all this, she was not going to back down. The realization of her own value and strength had become not just words for her, but a vital necessity. She began to devote more time to self-development. Read books, listened to lectures, learned new things. It was like building the foundation for a new house, which was supposed to become her refuge, but the world did not allow her to move forward without a fight. One day she learned unexpected news: he was planning to get married. This information hit her like a bolt of lightning, leaving her breathless and powerless. She felt that everything she had experienced, all her efforts and hopes were again in danger of collapsing. This forced her to delve into the past again, to look for answers to questions that had long tormented her soul. Why had he said that? Why had he given up on their life together so easily? Why had she not been able to hold on to what seemed strong and real? Every day, the pain and disappointment became more acute. She was experiencing a crisis that could either break her completely or make her stronger. And it was at this moment that she chose not to give up. She realized that her happiness did not depend on other people, even those she once loved the most. Her life was her choice, and no one had the right to control it. She began to set new goals for herself, to make plans that she had never even thought about before. She dared to take risks, to go beyond the usual in order to find true freedom and joy. Point one of these steps was a change of place of work and environment. She went to a new field of activity, where she did not know anyone, but she felt that it was there that she would be able to realize her potential. New acquaintances, new challenges and opportunities filled her life with bright colors. She felt how she became more confident every day, and the shadow of the past receded more and more. She began to value herself and her needs more, learned to say no to what did not suit her. This was an important lesson that strengthened her inner core. However, fate prepared another test for her. One day she received a letter from a person she had never expected to see in her life again. This letter opened old wounds that she had already healed, and made her think again about what had once been. Feelings of doubt and fear reappeared, but now she knew that she had no right to lose herself because of the past. She was ready to face what had once seemed insurmountable. Her life had acquired a new dynamic. She was on the verge of a great choice. And this choice could change everything. Life was becoming more and more confusing. The letter she received opened old pages before her that seemed to have been closed and forgotten long ago. It contained many unspoken words, old insults, and new questions. She spent countless nights trying to make sense of what she had heard and read, trying to untangle the tangle of emotions that pulled her in different directions. Memory was not on her side. She recalled moments of joy and pain, of hope and disappointment, when everything seemed possible, and then suddenly ended in mid-sentence. These memories reminded her that no decision is easy, and that human life is a series of choices that shape destiny. During this period, she felt that she had finally begun to understand that true strength is not in avoiding pain, but in the ability to live with it without betraying herself. This awareness gave her a new impetus to act. She decided to face her fear and move forward. Regardless of the uncertainty and risks, the changes in her life became more noticeable, not only to her, but also to those around her. She became a source of inspiration, proof that even after the worst, you can rise and find new meaning. Point one day she received an invitation to an exhibition where the work of the man mentioned in the letter was to be presented. It was a chance to look into the past again, but from a different perspective, with new possibilities and understanding. Her heart beat fast as she approached the meeting place. It was not just an exhibition hall, it was a stage on which a new chapter of her life could play out. The exhibition struck her with its depth and sincerity. Each work conveyed a story, emotions, experiences that were familiar and close. She felt that through art you can communicate without words, convey what sometimes cannot be described. It was like a confession that touched the finest strings of her soul. She understood that these works were not just creativity, but a way to cope with her own demons and search for answers. After the exhibition, she felt a strange relief, as if a heavy burden had been partially lifted from her shoulders. It was the beginning of a new era, where she could look to the future without fear or doubt. She began to trust herself, her decisions and feelings more. Life became less predictable, but more real and rich. She realized that every step on this path is a lesson, and that true wisdom is not in avoiding mistakes, but in learning from them and growing. Her story became an example of strength and endurance, inspiring others not to give up, even when it seems that all is lost. And although the future was uncertain, she was ready to accept it as it with all its surprises and challenges to it, was not a story about loss and disappointment, but about rebirth, hope and new beginnings. After the exhibition, she felt that life was gaining a new rhythm. Every day brought new impressions, new acquaintances, and opportunities. She began to realize that she herself creates her own future, and that now she can choose the path that leads to happiness. She deepened her hobbies, took up creativity, which she had previously put aside. She became more attentive to the little things, to the moments of joy and sadness that make up the canvas of life. These experiences made her stronger and wiser. Her circle of friends changed. People appeared who supported and inspired her, helped her move forward. She no longer felt lonely, and a sense of belonging became part of her new reality, and yet, sometimes the past reminded her of itself with unexpected memories, old wounds that ached from time to time. But now she was not afraid of these feelings. They became a reminder of how far she had come. Her work became a source of pleasure and inspiration. She got the opportunity to realize her ideas, to express herself in new roles that had previously seemed unattainable. This gave her confidence and a sense of self-worth. Her inner world became richer, full of new sensations and discoveries. She learned to appreciate the moment, to live here and now, without dwelling on worries about the future or regrets about the past. Once, during one of her walks, she came across an old photograph that reminded her of how much she had come. It was like a reminder that every step, every mistake, and every achievement shaped her present. She realized that now she would never return to who she was before. She became different, a person who could accept herself and her shortcomings, a person who was not afraid of change and challenges. Her life was not perfect, but it became real. She accepted this fact and began to appreciate every day, every moment, every new experience. She felt ready to move on, even if the path was difficult. She knew that true strength lies in believing in yourself and in the fact that every day is a new chance for happiness. Everything that happened before became part of her story, which is just starting to gain momentum. She felt that she was finally living her life, and this gave her incredible strength. The new stage of life brought not only joy, but also unexpected challenges. She faced situations that forced her to rethink what she had gone through and change her plans. One day she had an offer that could turn everything upside down, a chance to start a completely new business that required maximum immersion and courage. This choice became a test for her, to stay in her usual comfort zone or to risk everything for the sake of her dream. She hesitated, doubted, but in the end she chose to move forward. This decision became a symbol of her inner freedom and desire to live life to the fullest. Starting a new project required a lot of strength and time. She worked late, sometimes felt tired and desperate, but never gave up. Each small victory over herself and her circumstances strengthened her belief in herself and her capabilities. Her surroundings noticed the changes. She became more confident, purposeful, and this inspired many. She realized that her story was not only her personal struggle, but also an example for others. During one of these stressful days, she received unexpected news. A person from her past, whom she had long forgotten, needed help. This presented her with a difficult choice, whether to interfere in old matters that could only cause pain. She thought for a long time, realizing that this step could change not only her life, but also the lives of those she loved and valued. However, the strength and wisdom she gained helped her make a